Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is your leadership coach, Quincy Jackson, and I'm back again once again with another episode of Leading Daily, where we talk about how to increase your influence, your impact, and your income through leadership, which is without question one of the best ways that you can not only do that, but you can also make a real difference in the lives of people that you really impact first and foremost in the world, especially the world that's closest to you. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about just what I've been studying lately, today in leadership, and we're going to give you some insights on some things that maybe you didn't know. There was definitely some things I wasn't aware of, and if you were aware of some of these things, there's no harm in rehashing some of the foundational principles and ideas and wisdom philosophies that leadership is founded upon. So if you're new to the show, welcome. We thank you for tuning in. It's been a little inconsistent lately, I realize, but my goal is to at least try to deliver you guys at least one video a week. I realized that every day was getting a little bit too complicated, and so I had to figure out a schedule that would make sense so that it can be more consistent and giving you great value. But with that being said, today's article. Now you can see in the comments, at least in the description, if you're watching this on the replay, I did leave you guys an article by one of the leadership leaders that I've been following lately. Her name is Linda Fisher Thornton. Leading in Context is the name of her website, and she gives us, she was like almost bi-weekly updates in the area of leadership from multiple perspectives around the world. She's somebody that I've been following, I would say, for at least 6 months, and I believe a lot of her content is actually quite high value information. So once again, you can check out the description so you can actually read the article for yourself. And then she has additional articles that you can find there as well. But in this article, it talks about ethical leadership development and global awareness. So, global guidance beyond the law. Laws serve as the minimum standard for society, but responsible leadership requires that we go well beyond those minimum standards. So, today we're going to explore resources to understand one, what it means to be a globally responsible leader, and two, what kinds of learning opportunities help leaders develop a global sense of responsibility. So, the first question that Linda asks in this article is, who is the globally responsible leader? Leaders build responsible cultures and companies through strong ethical values and their own daily responsible actions and choices. As leaders, we will help shape the future of the businesses and societies we serve through our small actions and big decisions. What if we're not a leader in a global business? Is the question she asked. So maybe that's something that you was thinking about as well as we started talking about today's video and article. What if we're part of a small local community? In our complex, connected society, we all need to be thinking about ethical issues beyond our customers, our employees, and our communities and our profits. What is globally responsible leadership, and why does it need to be a business priority? If we did think beyond our geographical boundaries, what would that look like? And how can we develop and the present and future generation of global responsible leaders? Today, I share a collection of quotes from various sources that describe the thinking process of a globally responsible leader. So, the thinking process of a globally responsible leader include purpose, following ethical principles, societal responsibility and sustainability, creating a globally responsible culture, and then she goes into how can we develop responsible global leaders as well. So let's start with the first one, purpose. The globally responsible leader gets out of bed every day and goes to work energized by a sense of purpose. He or she has a strong enough sense of self, not to subordinate personally important values, but to impose those values on production. So, to be a responsible leader, that's by Grant Jones of GRLI magazine. So I haven't heard of that one before, but I would say that for most leaders, if it's not in the forefront of their mind to develop others around them. It's at least in the forefront of their mind, or at least it should be, to develop themselves, which you inadvertently are going to develop others around you. Next quote she shared: following ethical principles. The quote goes: guiding principles that establish a starting point for global responsible leadership include fairness, freedom, honesty, humanity, tolerance, transparency, responsibility, and solidarity, and sustainability. These are not fixed ethical points, but need to be constantly refined and developed. So I know I went through a strong list right there of words. Maybe some of those stood out to you. I'll go through them again really quickly. We have fairness, freedom, honesty, humanity, tolerance, transparency, responsibility, solidarity, and sustainability. So if you are working with the company right now, and you should see a lot of these values and qualities play out every single day at work. And if you don't, maybe it's time for you to start to maybe reconsider how you can emulate these things and then demonstrate them to your team. Even if it's just you, there's no need for you to compromise on these things whatsoever. And if you are not willing to do that with the company that you're with, maybe it's time for you to find a company that you can join and demonstrate, who also demonstrate these qualities as well. So that was actually from the Globally Responsible Leadership, a call for engagement at grli.org. All right. Next, we have societal responsibility and sustainability. So the quote says, corporate policy in its wildest sense, that means including the ethics around bringing their products to the market, should set objectives that take the corporation's societal global responsibility into account. That will be less complicated for the marketers of baby food than those trading arms, but both will have to do it. So this is from the Global Responsibility, the European Foundation for Management Development, which is also titled EFM as in Mary, D.org. All right. Next we have: it is no longer acceptable for a corporation to experience economic prosperity in isolation from those agents impacted by its actions. A firm must now focus its attention on both increasing its bottom line and being a good corporate citizen. Keeping abreast of global trends and remaining committed to financial obligations to deliver both private and public benefits have forced organizations to reshape their frameworks, rules, and business models. This comes from the Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability Business by Amato Henderson and Florence Center for Creative Leadership. So all of these guys are just resources, right? As I've told you before, the purpose of this podcast is not only to give you information and influence, but also to make you think about what it is that you can do to impact your leadership. And I can't do that without actually sharing with you resources either that I've already used or I am currently using to increase my knowledge base in this subject as well. Okay, so I hope that you are taking that away from this particular episode, because that's one of the things that I'm getting from it. And it's actually quite impressive, just thinking about it as I read through this with you. Okay. Next, let's go to creating a globally responsible culture. Okay. Creating a globally responsible culture. So, create economic and societal progress in a globally responsible and sustainable way. The Globally Responsible Leader, a call to action, Globally Responsible Leadership Initiative, or grli.org. All right. That's pretty cool. All right, so if you're just joining in, especially if you're watching this live, I just ask that you leave a comment, let me know where you're watching from, and thank you for tuning in. It's always a pleasure to see people tuning in from different uh, areas around the world. So let me know where you're watching from. If it's a different state, different country, we just love to engage with you, and thank you for tuning in and participating. Okay, come back over here. Just trying to get my got 3 screens right here, so I'm trying to work through them all. Next, we have leadership for global responsibility goes beyond setting a vision and goals. Okay, now this is a big one, so pay attention. I'll say this again: leadership for global responsibility goes beyond setting a vision and goals. The central point is action to create alignment and to maintain commitment, such as configuration of resources, development of supporting policies, implementation of globally responsible decision making criteria, setting personal examples, stakeholder engagement and alliances, and development of a globally responsible mindset. So, this comes to us from the Global Leadership Competence, a cultural intelligence perspective by Chin and Gainier at csuohio.edu. So, csuohio.edu. I like that quote. I like that it says the first thing, which is goes beyond just setting a vision and goals. Really, really good there. Although those things are important, it's not the end all. It's just the beginning. So, how can we develop responsible global leaders? Let's talk about that. So, a few things that we can have right off the bat are embracing complexity, seeing from multiple perspectives, educating responsibly, and then also it goes into leading into the future. So we're going to talk about four things really quick. All right, first is embracing complexity. So multiple perspective analysis helps students to understand the points of view of others who live in their community or across the world. Multiple perspective analysis deals with difficult questions of power, money, resource distribution, and conflict of interest. Such questions have complex answers. All right, that was a good one right there. So, exploring sustainable development, a multiple perspective approach by I think there's UNESCO Education Sector. So once again, if you haven't already, I'll drop this again. It's going to be in the description as well, but I'll drop this for you so you can actually look at this resource yourself and you know learn some of the insights as well, and hopefully you get more value than just what I'm saying here, but by reading this content for yourself. Okay, let's go into the next one: seeing from multiple perspectives. Now, this is a big one for a lot of people because they don't like to embrace other people's perspective, especially if they're the type of leader where they shun other people's ideas and try to close off any type of change or friction from whatever that person may have thought and whatever that person thinks. Let's listen to what this quote says about seeing from multiple perspectives. A multiple perspective approach promotes interdisciplinary and intercultural competencies as it addresses challenges to local or planetary sustainability. Interdisciplinary thinking, in which concepts and knowledge from different academic traditions are used to analyze situations or to solve problems, allows students to use knowledge in new and creative ways. Intercultural dialogue contributes to sustainable development by facilitating knowledge exchange, traditional, local, and scientific. Through combining all these valuable forms of knowledge, more sustainable practices can be developed and better resolutions to current issues may be achieved. Now, that was a mouthful right there. So I'm actually gonna encourage you to read through this. There's an additional link about exploring sustainable development, a multi-perspective approach. It's something that actually a company that looks like a company or United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development from 2005 to 2014. So it's really big insight there. So I would encourage you to check that out and do a little bit more deep dive in that regard. Next, we have educating responsibly. Okay. So educating responsibly. Bring this down a little bit. But above and beyond these considerations, the developed world, its universities, and its corporations must show in practice where the priorities lie. Foremost among them must be the need to bring global responsibility to the level of the individually educated person, which means committing the necessary resources to educating socially responsible citizens for a world desperately in need of them. Yikes, man. I've heard that before. I think this was about 2016. He just said that entitlement's high. Peter Voog actually said this. If you've never heard of Peter Voog, he's the leading authority for millennials and entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurial millennials. But he said that entitlement's high, and people feel like they are owed things before they actually put in the work more than ever. But leadership is at an all-time low. So that's why I decided to focus on developing myself as a leader, because I know that if I can get better in this area, or at least I believe, then it gives me the ability to make greater impact in the world around me, which until now, and it's still going on, it has done exactly that. And then next we have a principle that just underneath educated responsibility, which is teach. So remember, we transform our learning environments by integrating responsible management concepts and practices into our curriculum Okay. So great, great quote there. And lastly, let's talk about leading into the future. Seeing issues and problems from multiple perspectives and seeing ourselves as part of a global community will help us to lead our businesses into the future. For anyone training, coaching, mentoring, teaching, or simply setting a good example for other leaders in the organization, demonstrating globally responsible leadership should be a top priority. All right. So, what do you think about that? If you are just tuning in, let me know. And then I encourage you to comment on something that you heard that may have actually made a difference. Pause that a couple of times, rewind it, and then you can listen back to it as well. All right. Next thing I want to talk about. So that was one resource for today. I figured I would give you maybe 2 to 3. So I'll give you at least the second one, and then depending on how much time and how long we go, we might go into a third one. Okay. But the book Fast Growth talks about aligning, adapting, and adding value to the people around you to a, a career acceleration strategy. So this is by Dr. Price Pritchett. I believe I talked about this in a past video. I definitely talked about it in an audio podcast. So if you like that one, we're going to go into the second uh, chapter of this book, which is actually it's the first chapter, investing heavily in the now, because I don't think I talked about that one before. So investing heavily in the now. Now, fast growth is all about making sure you're adapting and adjusting accordingly to what it is that you're dealing with today, or what you've been dealing with over the last maybe a few months, maybe even a year or more, especially if it's been over a year, and figuring out how to apply what you need to apply today to accelerate your growth. Okay. Now, recently, it's kind of interesting. I never thought I would consider myself having this particular skill set, but I've been very interested and open to resume writing for a lot of people. I recently helped my wife with her resume because it was just not presented, I think, in a manner that gets people's attention very well. So she was open to having some feedback, and I made some adjustments. But then next thing you know, she was getting asked by people at her company that once she got hired and promoted into her position to actually go forward and help them as well. So I thought that was really cool. And so now we're helping multiple people. So in the last, I would say maybe 30 days, well, we've revamped 2 different people's resumes and helping them get they've already qualified for the interview. So I'm not saying that I did anything pretty special, but at least helping people with one of the key things that you need as you get ready to go into applying for new jobs and higher level positions in whatever the company is that you want to work for. But back to the book for a second. Let's talk about what Price Pritchett says, which is invest heavily in the now. And our fast growth requires a keen awareness of what you're doing with yourself. You need a strong sense of nowness, or to put it another way, it's important for you to maximize the value of the moment. Time is one of your most precious resources, and you don't get a second chance to use it. Your first shot is your last one. No do overs. You only get one crack at using any given time period for performance improvement. So listen to what he says right there. He says, "This your first shot is your last shot or your last one. There's no do overs. You only get one crack at using any given time period for performance improvement." So, what does that mean? That means once you have given something a year, you can't get that year back. Now, it's important that you learn from the things that you did that year, but once the year is done, the year is done. Okay. So I like that he says that because a lot of people will say, "Well, that's not true. I got multiple shots and multiple chances. I can reapply and apply." Yes, we're not talking about the fact that once you miss something and you can't get another chance, the time that you put into it is gone and past, so you can't get that time back. That's what he's saying there. Okay, let's take a quick sip here. Okay, so let's go forward in a second because I want to put an idea into context. If somebody tells you something, they heard from somebody, make sure they always tell you what the person said before and what they said after. It's one of my biggest uh, things that makes my skin crawl when somebody says, "I heard such and such say this." And I'm always like, well, what did they say before that? And what did they say after that? Because you can't just say one thing and think that means that's the entire context. It's like reading the Bible. People like to take a particular passage of scripture and put it in its own box, like it's not tied to what came before it and it's not tied to what came after it. So if you've been doing that for any length of time, I encourage you to stop doing that and be a listener of not only the things that you want to hear, but the entire context of what is said from the person that you're listening to. Okay. So pay attention. That's what he says next in the book. Okay. Consciously watch how you're spending the fleeting now and consider the payback you'll get. Are you making good investment? Are you making a good investment in your hours and minutes? Or are you wasting these sacred resources, spending time on stuff that offers little return, fumbling the opportunity for fast growth? Are you doing that? That's a question that you really want to ask yourself. By the way, this is a far bigger issue than it used to be. More important for your success than 20 more IQ points might be. The slower you go in developing yourself today, the faster you'll need to move tomorrow. Today's world refuses to wait on anyone. We must learn to grow more rapidly, or we'll fall further and further behind. We need to accelerate our adaptability because change keeps picking up speed. And let's not kid ourselves. This is a personal problem. It belongs to each of us privately as individuals. Nobody can fix it for us. We can't delegate our use of the now to someone else. We own it completely. Of course, this means each situation is in a position to handle. Sorry, this means that each person is in a position to handle the situation. You're in control. You can do something. You're the only one living your life, and you can choose to live it more powerfully. Just remember, growth can only occur in the present. You need to show a high respect for the now. Fill it with the right behaviors, and you'll be rewarded with fast results. So then the question I asked myself, and I wrote it down here in the book as well, it says, what are the right behaviors? So what are the right behaviors that you need to do for fast growth? Well, I think one of the main right behaviors for most people, without question, is reflection and consistent reflection. Now, whether you do that every day, every day, every week, every month, every year, you should be doing consistent reflections on your actions and activities where you are. So actions and activities is number one. Okay. Number two, it's where you are. And number three, making sure your goal is still important to you and you're taking action accordingly. What I've discovered, and this has been many years, I don't always apply like I should, but I'm working to get better, is that most of the things that we do, as you would probably know, are just distractions from whatever our outcome really is that we desire. And sometimes it's not even bad distractions. Sometimes it can be listening to an audio book that has no bearing at all in our future because it doesn't educate us the right way in the right things. Okay. Maybe sometimes it's reading an actual book, going to a networking event, going to a seminar. Not saying those things aren't good things to do, but is it getting us closer to the goal that we have set for ourselves? So, what I told myself I was going to do is strategically, and now this is March, so I gotta make sure that I'm staying true to it. Is that every other month do an in-person webinar or seminar, and every other month do an online or virtual seminar. One of the main reasons I want to do that is just to stay in the habit of constantly learning and learning in today's time. Right, I can go back to seminar Jim Rohn from 1981 or 1980s or 1970s. That's possible. But does that really help me in today's time? In some cases, it will, because Jim Rohn has a philosophy that kind of overarches business and life. But then I also need to know what I need to know now to help me as a better leader and manager today. So I need to know what's working. Okay. So maybe you need to work on doing the same thing. Okay. Now, being a fast grower and fast learner means that you can't hold so tightly onto the things that you learned in the past that you don't learn what you need to learn today to go into the future. For instance, that's what Bob Proctor talks about when he says paradigms. So a lot of people, myself included, hold on to paradigms from their mothers, their fathers, their grandparents that served them at that time, but it served them in a way to live the life that they lived back then. Now, if you are not living the way they lived, probably a high percentage of the paradigms that you're holding on to don't apply anymore. And you should drop some of them so you can pick up some of the new ones that you need in your life. Okay. I've heard, I think it was somebody that said this before in a movie or somewhere that you can't receive if your cup is already full. So you have to be willing to pour out some of your own cup in order to receive the cup or the whatever the fluid and knowledge and information is of the person that has more and something else for you from their cup. Okay. So ask yourself, have you been doing that? All right. Now, to me, that ties into the right behaviors because that's another thing. You want to find a mentor, you want to find a coach, you want to find somebody that can guide you. That's really all it is. It's just about getting the proper guidance. How you do that is completely up to you. But I think the question, without question, is that it should be done. And I'm going to leave you with this one quote related to fast growth. This is straight from the book. It says, I was in a drugstore the other day trying to get a cold medication. It was not easy. There's an entire wall of products that you need. You stand there going, well, this one is quick acting, but this is long lasting. Which is more important, the present or the future? So I'll leave you with that to ponder on, and hopefully it makes a big impact in your knowledge and ideas about what it is that you're doing on a daily basis, and also where is it taking you to. All right. So how are you doing? And if hope you're still doing well. If you're still with me, drop a comment below and let me know that you are enjoying the insight. Hopefully, it's some of this information and content has rung some bells for you, and hope it's making a little bit of a difference as well. The last thing that I'm going to talk about just for a few minutes and explore is just one quote from the book Leadership Strategy and Tactics by Jocko Willink. It's one of his books. I think he has at least 3 now. Maybe he has more books like here. But this was actually given to me by one of my last operations managers when I was working with Amazon. And I just want to share with you one quote that I highlighted. and kind of dive into why I highlighted it and letting giving you my perspective on it and how I think it applies to me and you, especially if you're working in corporate America today. So the quote says, I realized that by high porting my weapon, stepping back off the firing line, and looking around by detaching physically, even if only by a few inches, and more important, detaching mentally from the problem at hand, I was able to see infinitely more than anyone else in my platoon. If you guys don't know, Jocko is a former Navy SEAL, so that's why he's talking about platoons in this quote. And since I was able to see everything, I was able to make a good decision, which allowed me, a new guy and the most junior guy in the platoon, to lead. Then I made it my goal to never be completely caught up in the minuscule tactical aspects of a problem. My goal was to get to a higher mental and physical altitude. It worked in every simulated combat environment we were put in. The more often I detached, the easier it became to see and understand the tactical picture, and the better I got at it. So think about what he's saying now. In this example, I think they're doing a training exercise. It actually may have been real. I can go, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can actually go check out the book for yourself. But he said that everybody in his line was staring down their weapon, looking straight ahead, but they weren't actually being aware of everything else going on around them. They were so focused and intent on the situation in front of them that they didn't detach mentally, at least, to really see the bigger picture of what else was going on around them. So I encourage you that if you are somebody that is working in a job, whatever that job may be, you know, you have performance points or key metrics, KPIs that you need to achieve for your team, for your company. But then start to take a broader view and see how your actions and how your how what you're doing is impacting everyone around you. All right, that will help you to detach and to have a broader perspective as a leader, depending on whatever you're doing, especially whenever it comes to determining how close you are getting toward the goal that you're setting after. Okay, so that's one thing I want to share with you all from this particular book. We're going to come back with more in this book in the future. And that's going to be this episode, guys. Really short, to the point. Just some value I wanted to deliver to you there. And as I said before, if you're new to the podcast, if you're new to the channel, we all about leadership here. We're all about helping you develop yourself as a leader, because that directly impacts or makes a difference, in your impact, your influence, and your income. So every single time I've developed myself as a leader, I've gotten more confidence, and very shortly thereafter, my income followed suit. All right. It's not something that happens after one day. And it's honestly not even something that you feel happening in the moment. It's like watching grass grow. It happens slowly, but you give it enough time. You walk outside, now you have a high field, a high front yard or backyard of grass that needs to be cut down. Okay. Now, obviously, we're not talking about cutting down grass, just giving you an analogy and example here. But that's going to be today's episode of Leading Daily. Thank you so much for tuning in. I ask that you do like this particular video, like this episode, share it with somebody that you think maybe benefit from it. And we'll, as always, we look to bring you absolutely great value frequently, consistently. And we hope that you did get a lot of great value from today's episode. So until next time, my name is Quincy Jackson, and we'll be talking to you later. Have a great rest of your day.